This is a video to accompany you as you do the classwork for May 27th. In the exercises that you're given, you have to complete a table of values for each quadratic equation or function, show all your calculations, graph the quadratic function, its parabola by plotting 7 key points, and those are going to come from the table, identify and label the axis of symmetry, identify and label the vertex, the turning point, identify and label the x-intercepts, which are the roots, and also identify and label the y-intercept. We're going to start by looking at our first one, which is y equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 8. In this example, our a value is equal to a negative 1, our b value is equal to a 4, and our c value is equal to a negative 8. The first thing that we want to do is find the axis of symmetry. Using the formula x equals negative b over 2a. So we're going to take negative b is going to be negative 4 over 2 times a is negative 1, so it's going to be, the denominator is 2 times negative 1. This is negative 4 over negative 2. X equals positive 2 is your axis of symmetry. You're going to leave 3 of the open spots and then put that axis of symmetry x value on that 4th spot and then leave 3 above it. We also would like to find the y value corresponding to that x value. And we're going to do that, and this is going to help us to find the vertex. We know that x is 2, but what is the y value of the vertex? We do that by plugging in our x value into the equation that we were given. Y equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 8. We're going to plug in the x value that we just got, so we're going to put negative 2 we're going to put x equals 2, substitute 2 for x. So it's going to be negative, and then the x value is squared, plus 4 times a positive 2 minus 8. And this is going to be equal to a negative 4 plus 8 minus 8, which is just going to work out to be a negative 4. So our vertex has a y value of negative 4. And the best thing to do would be to, in this space here, it says show your computations here. So although I did it there too, we're going to rewrite that here. So we took negative, and then we took our x value and squared it. The negative is in front of it, so the negative should not be in parentheses. And then you put plus 4 times x, which is 2, and then you're going to subtract 8. That's the work that leads to that y value. That's your vertex. Right here is going to be the vertex, the turning point. And we would like to show 3 x values below that 2. So we're going to use a 1, a 0, and a negative 1, and 3 above. So we're going to use x is 3, x is 4, and x is 5. And we're going to find the y values corresponding to each of those x values. So here we're going to use x is equal to negative 1. So this is going to be negative, open parentheses, put in your negative 1 for x, square that, and add on 4 times x, which is a negative 1, and then take off 8, and then that would give you the y value. I will do that in a minute. Well, first I'm going to fill in all my column 2's, the expressions there. So then we're going to do a negative 0 for x, square that, add on 4 times 0 minus 8. Now x is 1, so we're going to do negative, take 1 and square it, add it to 4 times 1, and then take away 8. We already did that one. X is 3 now, so it's going to be negative, open parentheses, put in 3 for x, square that, add on 4 times the 3, which is x, minus 8. And then x is 4, negative, open parentheses, put the 4 in for x, square that, add on 4 times 4 for x, and then take away 8. And then x is 5, so we're going to do negative, open parentheses, 5, square that, add on 4 times 5, and take away 8. And we would do all this math. It's important to know how to do this by hand using the order of operations, but I will show you a shortcut your calculator can help you to make this table. We're going to go to y equals, and in that first spot, we're going to put in that equation, negative x squared plus 4x minus 8. And then, and by the way, in case you were wondering, that's where I got the x from, the variable, that button. So now I'm going to graph that. Important to note that the graph is facing downward, the arrows are going to face downward. And that comes as no surprise because our a value is negative. So it should be facing downward, and it would have a maximum point here, and then it would drop. The arrows would drop downward. So if we want to find the table of values, we do second graph. That's why table is above there in gold. And my x value is -1. My y value is going to be a -13. X is 0. The y is -8. X is 1. The y is -5. We already know our vertex is right here, 2, -4. Then we have 3, -5. And then we have 4, -8. And then we have x is 5 and y is -13. So the ordered pair there would be 5, -13. And what you're going to notice is that you're going to see symmetry. These are going to match up, these are going to match up, these are going to match up, and that -4 is in the middle since it's your turning point, it's the vertex. So now we're going to go ahead and graph those points. I'm going to set up my grid, label it. I already have the labels on the x-axis and y-axis. If they weren't there, I would put them. And then I'm going to label my grid marks. I'm going to count by ones. And after labeling, we're going to go ahead and plot those points. -1, -13. We're not going to plot that one. It's too difficult to plot because the grid doesn't go that far. We are going to go to the next one, which is 0, -8. X is 0, down to -8. And then we have 1, -5. Followed by 2, -4. Again, that's our vertex. So we're expecting it to start turning now. The next point would be 3, -5. It now turns, as expected. 4, -8. And again, we're not going to be able to plot 5, -13 because the grid doesn't go that far. We're going to connect this with a U shape. It's facing downward. And it's always good to check your calculator like we did earlier. We know that the graph should look something like this, and it does. It's a good reference point. And now it also, so that's not the whole point of this, because it also says identify and label the axis of symmetry. So right here is your axis of symmetry. Remember, it was x equals 2, and I already had the work that showed that. So I'm going to put a dotted line through that, a dotted vertical line, and then I'm going to label this axis of symmetry, which is x equals 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and label the vertex right here. This green point is my vertex, and I'm going to label it with the coordinate 2, -4. Okay, it also says to identify and label x-intercepts. Now, if you look here, this graph is not going to cross the x-axis. So what that means is there are no real solutions. or x-intercepts. That does not mean that there are no solutions in general. In Algebra 2, you're going to learn more about that, but for the purpose of Algebra 1, what you have to realize is this graph does not cross the x-axis, and that's okay. It's still a quadratic function. It's still a parabola. It just doesn't cross the x-axis, so that means that there are no real solutions or x-intercepts. So we're just going to write that. Make sure you put the word real, because there are solutions, but they're going to be taught in Algebra 2. And then the other thing was to label the y-axis, the y-intercept, and right here is where it does cross the y-axis at 0, -8. So we're going to put y-intercept 0, -8. Make sure you label all that because it's part of this. So that this doesn't get so long, I'm going to do the next ones on different videos.